and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Thursday, the 23rd of May, 2019, and tonight's topic is gold-backed cryptocurrency. Russia's central bank says it is considering it. Last night we talked about the 500,000 ounces that the Central Bank of Russia added to her reserves in April. And tonight we're going to talk about the possibility of the Central Bank of Russia issuing a gold-backed cryptocurrency. Good evening, small gold mug stackers and game changers. Let's take a look quickly at the markets today, and then we'll get into our top story, and then we've got a bunch of other gold and crypto stories to get to. Maybe tomorrow we'll hit on what's happening with the impeachment talk with Trump and the declassification of documents and so on. But tonight we're going to stick to the gold, silver, and cryptocurrency. So let's take a look. The Dow Jones at one point was down significantly today, and they're blaming it on China. It recovered a bit. It was down over 400 points at one point, closed down 286 points, and that's just down a little over 1.1%. You know, when you think about the moves in silver and even gold, I mean, 1% drop is not that big of a deal. But in the stock market, it looks big because it's a 200, 300 point drop. NASDAQ was down a bit more significantly, down to 76.28, down about 1.5 and it was down a percentage and a half. And it was down 122 points to 76.28. And then S&P 500 down just a little over 1%, 1.19% to 28.22. Gold and silver have been floundering a bit, although they were up today. Silver was up to 14.56 and gold was up to 12.83. Silver started the day around 14.39, got as high as 14.61 and closed the day at 14.56. Gold also had a pretty decent day. It started at 12.72, rose up to 12.86 and closed at 12.83. And it's about where both are right now. Gold at 12.83 and silver at 14.56. All right, let's take a look at this Russian gold-backed cryptocurrency. Now, what do they mean by a gold-backed cryptocurrency? It doesn't mean that the ruble itself, the national currency, is going to be backed by gold. At least that's not what the TASS story, we're going to take a look at that story. TASS is the Russian information dissemination service, similar to what they had in the communist days of Pravda. Although I think TASS also was around at that time. Maybe somebody can correct me on all of that. But there was word in TASS today that they might have a gold-backed ruble. And let me get you the quote here. So the governor of the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia's name is Elvira Nabulina. And she said the Bank of Russia will review a proposal to create a gold-backed cryptocurrency which can be used for mutual settlements with other countries. Now, a proposal is similar to what the Fed is looking at, a proposal for Fedcoin. And the Fed has been looking at faster payments for about 6 years now. And they have about, it's not just Fedcoin, there's about 8 other options they could use to issue a digital currency if the Federal Reserve so wished to do so. This sounds like something similar that the Central Bank of Russia is considering one of these gold-backed cryptocurrencies. Now, the details are scant, but I'll give you her quote. You make of it what you wish. As for mutual settlements, she says, we will consider, of course, your proposal on what a gold-backed cryptocurrency. Then she says, but in my opinion, it's more important to develop settlements in national currency, she said at the State Duma. And the rationale for that is it is more convenient to trade, if they can trade in dollars, to see if they can trade, obviously, in ruble with foreign counterparts, or if they had to accumulate other foreign reserve currencies, for example, the euro, the yen, the yuan, Swiss francs, then they might use those to settle their trade payments. Now, of course, gold is always accepted. The issue with using gold as a trade settlement is, in today's world, it's not convenient to be sending gold in ships back and forth and it's also not very trustworthy just to have gold shifted on pallets and changing the name on one pallet to the other. And also, of course, gold is not as divisible as digital fiat currencies are. It's a lot easier to settle your accounts exactly to the note on your trade transactions. But she's opening up the opportunity or the potential to create a gold-backed cryptocurrency. Now, the way I would think about this, and we'll see what you guys think in the comments. If you want to leave a comment on this, you can either comment below, or if you're on the live stream, type in SMAULGLD to leave your comment. We could talk about it when we finish the stories tonight at the end of the program. Well, I view this as something like a gold trade note. What a gold trade note does, it allows the parties not to have to worry about the moving of the gold back and forth. It makes it easier to transact than having to have gold in escrow and then releasing the gold and then have somebody come and pick it up and then move it back and forth. That would be unwieldy. But that's how the original gold standard worked. Not the Bretton Woods one, but back during the classical gold standard, every country had put its national currency based on a unit weight of gold. And if you had a trade surplus, then you'd get gold coming in because you were selling goods. You'd have trade surplus, so you would then get the gold and you'd have a gold surplus. And if you're running a deficit, you would lose your gold. You'd have to ship your gold out in order to get your goods and services. And that's why the gold people, proponents of the classical gold standard, say it works, because it keeps the natural flow back and forth. You want to run a deficit, go ahead, but you're going to lose your gold. So you're encouraged to produce so that you can get the gold. This is not the same thing. No country today in their right mind would issue a gold-backed currency similar to what they had during Bretton Woods. Why? Because Bretton Woods failed. Bretton Woods is essentially a dollar standard whereby all the countries agreed that the dollar would be the world reserve currency, and that's what people would, countries would settle their trade in. And in order to get countries on board, they had to have a little kicker in, and they said, look, we'll just, instead of everybody being on a gold standard, the U.S. dollar will be as good as gold, and any central bank that signs on to these Bretton Woods agreements can, if they've accumulated dollars, bring them to the U.S. Treasury and get gold at the price of $35 an ounce. And that had been the price of gold since 1934, which was set by an act of Congress in 1934. This is the Bretton Woods agreements were entered into in 1944, and they lasted with the gold price at $35 an ounce until 1971. And the way they had to collect the gold was the country, let's say it was France or Germany or Switzerland, they had accumulated dollars in the post-World War II economy, and they would send gunships over to the United States, not to attack the United States, but to protect themselves against pirates. And they would bring their dollars and they would get their gold and they'd go on their merry way. And eventually, the United States, Richard Nixon said, we're going to temporarily close the gold window, and meaning central banks that are signatories to this Bretton Woods agreement that are supposed to be able to come and exchange their dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. Well, guess what? You can't do that anymore. Now, makes sense. No matter how strong a fiat currency is, it's never going to be as strong as gold. And the other signatories realized that in the late 50s, especially during the 60s, when the U.S. was spending a lot of money on the Vietnam War, on the space race, on the Great Society. And they realized that maybe there's just not enough enough gold to cover the dollars. And if we're allowed to come and get gold for our dollars, yeah, we know the dollar supposedly as good as gold, but you know what's as good as gold? Gold is as good as gold. And so they started coming and saying, yeah, I understand dollar's as good as gold, but because it's as good as gold, I want the gold. And they would take the gold. And eventually the United States realized they were going to run out of gold. So that's why it would be moronic for a country today to back their currency with gold on the basis that it's convertible into gold. That's why that whole gold back yuan game changer story, first of all, was never true. And it would never make any sense for China just to drain all of its gold to say, yeah, you know what? You don't want to hold on to yuan? Yeah, just convert them over at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Well, whatever yuan people had, they'd be right at the door of Shanghai, and they'd say, here's your yuan, let's have the gold. And China and its the amounts that they say China has, 20,000 tons, it would all be gone in a matter of weeks. So that's not going to happen. And this is not what Russia is planning. They're not stupid. They're not going to back the ruble. When countries add gold to their reserves, they're not doing it so they can back their currency. They're doing it so they have solid reserves. Now, unfortunately, if you've seen the countries that add gold to reserves, it doesn't really improve their currency position. It just improves their ability, if they have to make payments. And I think that's where this is headed. That if Russia can't work out bilateral, different arrangements with different countries to trade. This is part of de-dollarization. There's no doubt about it. For them, because they're under sanctions, same with Iran, they have to come up with ways of trading amongst themselves. The problem with trading with Iran is who wants to take the Iran rial. Same thing with Russia. The Russian ruble is not a strong currency either. So what countries like Russia or Iran generally do is they accumulate dollars. Well, they're kicked out of the SWIFT system, then accumulating dollars isn't going to do them much good, but then gold isn't going to be very helpful if they don't have a mechanism to trade the gold. And that's where a cryptocurrency comes in. Now, the issue with a cryptocurrency, though, is you still have the issue of trust. They didn't get into, I'm looking at the article. This is the article from TASS. I'll leave it in the notes tomorrow on the Smaulgld website. She says here, we are generally opposed to cryptocurrencies being launched into the monetary system. We do not see the possibility that cryptocurrencies could act as monetary surrogates, definitely not in this part. So the problem with even doing a gold-backed cryptocurrency is still a cryptocurrency. And the issue with a cryptocurrency backed by gold is you have the same issue you have with a gold trade note. Where's the gold going to sit? Who's going to act as a custodian for gold? You still have to trust the holder of the gold and that you have ownership over. Now, just because you have a token, a cryptocurrency token that says, I have $80,000 worth of gold on this token, well, how do you redeem it? Or do you just assume that wherever it is, it's safe and you have a right to it? It's the same thing in a way. The Bretton Woods Agreement was there were generally more dollars outstanding in foreign countries that if they wanted to, they could do a run on the bank is exactly what they did. They bring their dollars and the United States has to hand over the gold and then they run out of gold. Well, it's the same with this situation. If Russia were to do a gold-backed cryptocurrency, and they don't give any details here. They say, it says, we have prepared an analytical report. We'll present it soon that we'll analyze what cryptocurrencies are, what is happening in the world, what approaches countries have taken, what regulation is provided. But they're not really, I don't think it's a serious plan. I think they're still working on figuring out how to do trade in other currencies, fiat currencies, national currencies. And that's what she says. The first sentence is, it's more important to develop settlements in national currencies. Because you do have, with cryptocurrencies, you have the issue who's going to accept them. Even a gold-backed cryptocurrency, you still have the issue of custody. Where's the gold going to sit? How are you going to transfer the gold? Who's going to audit where it is? So all a gold-backed cryptocurrency would just be a technologically superior gold trade note, which for purposes of right now, I'd imagine that the gold trade note, if they're going to use a gold as a payment currency, is probably just as good. It doesn't have to be on a blockchain. It doesn't have to be a cryptocurrency. You can do it all digitally. You can keep all the ledgers without it being a cryptocurrency, and you can keep accounts of your trade accounts and still issue gold trade notes, digital notes, whatever they might be. So I don't think it's a big development because it's not for the purposes of backing the ruble with gold. It's for purposes of creating trading options, payment options that are suitable. And that's their big issue right now because they sell a lot of oil and now they sell a lot of agriculture and they sell a lot of natural gas. Now, when they sell natural gas to the European Union, well, they'll take euro. I don't think that there's an issue there. It's just that, I mean, the trade back and forth, they'll take the euro. The question is, will the European states want to have the ruble? And chances are they don't. So I don't know how Russia pays Europe right now, but I would imagine they have dollars accumulated and they use those. So this is what's going on in China. In Russia, as far as I can tell, the story is scant on details. And the other thing is sometimes they just float these comments here. There's no substance behind it. I read you pretty much all that's in the TASS article. And then if you go online and you do a Google search, you'll see 1,000 different stories, all just citing liberally from the TASS article. But there it is. That's what they're saying is possible. But again, I don't think it's not going to create any extra gold demand. All right, let's move on to more on central banks. Now, the other thing that I saw today, and I think it was a Bloomberg report. I don't know who it was. But this whole China's dumping treasuries. And this is significant because what they did in the last 2 months is not in the ordinary course of the ebb and flow. Like hell it isn't. Look at this chart. There's very little change in the amounts that China has held. This chart goes back to June 2016 when they had about 1.245 billion in U.S. treasuries. Then in November that year, they had just a trillion. In November that year, they had just over a trillion. Then it went up to like 1.2 trillion. And it's October of 2018, they had 1.138 trillion. And now they have 1.12 trillion. There's really not much of a difference here. This whole dumping treasuries is just a clickbait headline. Now I'm going to show you something else. Even though China did dump 10 billion in March, the other countries bought more. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. It says there is no dumping of treasuries going on. Overall holdings of U.S. treasuries by foreigners increased as Japan and the U.K. and other countries' additional purchases far outpaced Chinese selling. But let's take a look, and you can probably see, you can't see there, but I've tried to blow it up here. And maybe you can see that. If not, on Smaulgld, you can see it tomorrow in a much bigger chart. But I think you can read this. So China had 1.139 trillion in treasuries in February. They went down to 1.120. All right, so maybe they lost almost $20 billion worth of treasuries. That's not a big deal for them to lose $20 billion in treasuries. But Japan went from 1.072 to 1.078 trillion. United Kingdom went from 283 billion to 317. That is $34 billion increase in the United Kingdom, which blows away the $20 billion decrease by, or $19 billion decrease by the Chinese mainland. Overall, in February, there were 6.3 trillion 85 treasuries purchased, or held by, not purchased, but held by, and that went up to 6.473 in March. So you're seeing a big increase, over $100 billion increase net in U.S. treasuries. So this whole dumping treasuries, which I'm surprised now, you get it from the gold pumpers. They're always saying dumping treasuries, end of dollar hegemony, multi-polar world, de-dollarization. Yeah, you expect that from the gold pumpers. But now you're seeing it in the mainstream media, and I suspect it's because it's the same type of anti-U.S., when Trump is in office, type of reporting. And a lot of the gold pumpers, they're always for China, against the United States because they produce and we just borrow money, as if China doesn't borrow more money than the rest of the world. But there it is. This chart here, I didn't make this chart up. This chart is from the U.S. Treasury, and it keeps track of foreign holdings of U.S. Treasuries. And these numbers are not in dispute. These are the numbers that they're saying China is dumping treasuries, because they dumped nearly $20 billion between February and March. They didn't mention that Japan, United Kingdom added treasuries. Brazil added $3 billion, Ireland added $3 billion, Luxembourg $3 billion, Switzerland $1 billion, Cayman Islands $9 billion, Hong Kong added $5 billion, Belgium $3 billion, Saudi Arabia added $3 billion. If you look at this chart, it's mostly countries adding treasuries to reserves, and as we saw in this other chart, the Chinese, while they did lose the 19 billion in between February and March, they've lost more on other months. Look at where they went from June in 2016 to November of 2016. they lost like 200 billion during that time period. And this is the normal ebb and flow. This is just central bank management. Now, that's not to say that China might want to shed some more. But again, if China is going to shed treasuries, it's not going to do it in one go. That's worse than biting your nose to spite your face. It really would have a temporary impact on the treasury market, and it would be utterly stupid. It should be just like when, this is something you guys might appreciate, is when someone in the middle of the night sells like 600,000 tons of gold at the worst possible price. China's not in the business of doing stupid things just to harm the United States, especially there's not going to be much harm anyway in doing that. The only way that China can harm the United States, and it can't be done in one action, the nuclear option is all these, it's moronic to think this. The way China has to get out of this position, it has to do it gradually and over time, and it has to be smart about it. Dumping treasuries is not smart. Dumping treasuries is moronic, and they're not going to do it. And if they did do it, then it would make one stitch of sense for them to do it any more than it would make for them to do gold-backed yuan. And if you got a problem, as Mike Maloney says, you just bring your gold, bring your yuan to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. It all happens there. Gold's game changer. Never was going to happen, doesn't happen. These are fantasies. China dumping treasuries, gold-backed yuan. All right. And again, if you look, they're not even dumping treasuries. There's barely a movement on this chart here. And this is what passes for journalism. They keep telling you they're dumping treasuries, or gold pumpers telling you they're dumping treasuries. Now let's see what else is happening in the world of central banks. The Bank of England on cryptocurrencies. Now this is interesting. This guy says that Bank of England's chief economist thinks Bitcoin could replace cash. It's an interesting point of view, especially coming from a Bank of England chief economist. But then the ECB has to say that cryptocurrencies pose no threat to financial stability. Now, I remember back in 2017, they were saying when Bitcoin was up around 20,000 and the overall market cap of the cryptocurrencies was about, I remember seeing it, 787 billion. Right now, they're worth about under 200 billion. And they were saying, if this stuff collapses, it's not going to cause systemic issues because what's $1 trillion? Well, we did lose. We essentially lost about, probably $600 billion worth of, quote, value when the cryptocurrencies collapsed in 2018, and it didn't have any impact. But they did mention that if they get big enough, because could you imagine that, let's say we have 3 more cycles of what happens traditionally in Bitcoin. It goes from 100 to 1,000 and then back to 200. Then from 200 to, it goes up and it goes down. It goes up parabolically, then it goes down 80%. Well, let's say this happens again. So let's say we go from $4,000 instead of when we went from 700 to 20,000. Let's say we go from 4,000 to 100,000 and then collapse back down to 20,000 and then go from 20,000 to 250,000 then collapse back down to 80,000. You go from $80,000 to $1 million, whatever. Well, at that point, then you're talking about a few $1 trillion. And that type of money exiting the system could have a threat to financial stability. Now, one could say that at some point, if Bitcoin continues in its ordinary course, these types of 80% drops will be a thing of the past, and these parabolic rises will also be a thing of the past. But who knows? All right. Interesting, JP Morgan. One of the big knocks on Bitcoin is that it doesn't have intrinsic value. Well, JP Morgan now has a pricing model that says what Bitcoin's intrinsic value is. And they look at it based on all these different inputs, mostly energy. And now they're saying it's overvalued versus its intrinsic value. So it doesn't have intrinsic value when they want to say it's worthless. And now it has an intrinsic value component when they want to say it's overvalued. And you've got all these people out now with price. They're all coming out of the woodwork now. We've had this price spike. Hedge fund executives predict pretty much an average of $10,000 by the end of the year for crypto. You never see the end of this. Let's see what other ridiculous predictions we have in the price. Here's one: $250,000 billionaire investor. Yeah, he will be a billionaire, I suppose, if Bitcoin goes to $250,000. There's a Dan Draper, Tim Draper, whatever his name is, prominent Bitcoin proponent. This one is what, 10,000? This is just analysts. These aren't, see, the hedge fund managers are under 10,000, but the analysts say 10,000 this year. Here's another 250. Maybe it's the same one. Yep, that's the same one. Bitcoin. This is a billionaire. The millionaires and the billionaires. By the way, I heard Dan Bongino today, and he's doing a lot of Bernie. And I try to be objective. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And maybe I don't know. But I thought my Bernie was much better than his. I was listening to it. I was thinking, that doesn't even sound like him. Anyway. The 1% in this country. All right, double-digit gains. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah, here's one. This guy's name is Matty Greenspan. He's predicting another parabolic cycle. He's mentioning that this is just typical. Yeah, you lose 80%, then it goes up 50,000%. So I'm saying we're entering into this latest parabolic rise. I don't know, what does it go to? 100, 200, 300,000? Something like that. All right, let's move on from the price. I don't want to call it idiocy, but well, we'll have one more here. Brian Kelly. Now, I don't know how they let this guy in the show. He runs a Bitcoin fund. I mean, and he doesn't analyze it. He cheerleads it, and he's on like CNBC cheerleading on Bitcoin, and he's mentioning the halving, and that's coming up next year. I mean, it's not even close. But the concept of a halving is very interesting for those of you who don't know what it is. It's built into the software code of some of the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Litecoin. And what it does is it reduces by half every 4 years the amount of rewards that a miner can get in a particular block. And so that basically means that the supply is cut. What's normally flowing out of the miners is going to be cut in half precisely at a time when, as it's kind of genius the way they set it up, as the cryptocurrency matures, there's more demand for it, obviously, because it's getting adoption. And just as that's happening, they're cutting off the supply, and eventually the supply ends. Now, it's one of those things where it ends way out in the future, but by the time the last Bitcoin is mined, it's like the reward is so small, and presumably because the price is so high, it all works out. But that's going to happen next year for Bitcoin. This year it happens for Litecoin in August. So there's some people thinking that Litecoin is going to have this big surge. Now, some people say it's not, because miners may say, well, screw this. If I'm only going to get half the reward, I'm not going to mine it. And then there's the danger. See, all these things, they have risks. People just assume that, well, they go up because people want them to go up. However, if the price is going up, then it's almost, you want the price to go up if you're a miner, if you're going to get cut in half, and then you can just continue and you make the same amount of money. If the price doubles and you get half a reward, you made the same amount, so it's worth your while. But in a sense, the price has to double in order for it to make sense for the miner to keep mining. Remember, if the miners don't mine, the system becomes insecure, becomes subject to a 51% attack, and the whole thing falls apart and you go to zero if it's a long-term issue. All right, let's talk about adoption. A lot of big adoption stories. I was going to lead with this. at&t is now going to accept Bitcoin as payment through a payment processor, which again is, a lot of people, they scoff at that. So, well, they're not really accepting Bitcoin. No, they are. It doesn't matter whether at&t holds the Bitcoin or not. It means that there is a flow of Bitcoin through the system, meaning the payment processor is going to accept the Bitcoin for payment to at&t. They're going to convert the Bitcoin into fiat currency, send it to at&t. at&t gets paid. There's no issues. They don't have to do any accounting issues. And then immediately, the payment processor then on-sells that Bitcoin that they purchased in order to convert it into fiat to send it to at&t, for which they collect a fee. And then they sell it either to an exchange, or if they're running an exchange, like Coinbase is, they then on-sell that to the customers that are looking to buy Bitcoin on their exchange, and then they charge them a fee. So essentially, it's somewhat antithetical to the concept of a peer-to-peer payment system, which is what Bitcoin is supposed to be. When it runs through all these hoops, it goes from a holder or a hodler to a payment processor to a corporation, and then from the payment processor to an exchange, and then from the exchange to another person to buy it. Well, it's gone through a bunch of hops there, and somebody's taking the fees as you go through, although those fees are less than credit card fees. So anyway, big news, at&t accepting the crypto payments that was announced today. It was announced in a lot of places earlier in the day. Now, we didn't mention, what did the price of these things do today? It looks like, they're up pretty much. Bitcoin is up 3.12% at 79.33. Litecoin at, what is it at? Looks like it's 89 or something. Machine's not working. Oh, 89.42. It's up 1%. Oh, and Ethereum, before I mention Ethereum, the Grayscale company, the company that's behind the Drop Gold, they have a product on, you can buy on the OTC if you have a Schwab account, an E-Trade account, a Fidelity account. It's a Bitcoin trust. And originally was set up for institutional investors, but it trades over the counter, meaning you can buy it. Now, it has a premium on it over the price of Bitcoin. You pay a premium for that because you don't have to hold it, and because it's really the only product of its type that's available. And for some states, like I think in Minnesota, you're not allowed to buy it. But in any event, they have that product, and they have about 200,000 Bitcoin in there, maybe more, I'm not sure. But they just got approval for mom and pop now, same type of trust, but now being on the over-the-counter for Ethereum. Grayscale Investments announces approval of public quotation for eligible shares of Grayscale's Ethereum Trust. Now, Ethereum today, I would have thought would have risen on the news, but it's only up 0.70%. It's at $247. And I guess this is going to operate the same way that the Bitcoin Trust is. Now, they have a trust for all the other coins, not all the major coins. They have a Litecoin Trust. They have an Ethereum Classic Trust. They've got a few others. But from what we learned the other day, they have, I think it was 95% of all the money in the first quarter went into the Bitcoin Trust. So no one's interested in the Ethereum Classic, the Ethereum, the Litecoin, all the other trusts that they have. The amounts are de minimis, and they're not de minimis, but they're not at the same size and scale as the Bitcoin Trust. Now, not sure how this one's going to do, and maybe that's why the Ethereum price didn't move much today. I would have thought offering Ethereum to people that could just buy retail, mom and pop, on an exchange. Remember, this is not a crypto exchange. This is just a product in a trust. You're buying shares in a trust. There's a lot more here on adoption. Okay, so Coinstar. Let's do Coinbase because we were talking about payment processing. Coinbase announced that since last year, they've processed $50 million worth of payments. And this app, this is just on the app. They probably process more, but on the app. And the way that one works is, I did set a client up with this. You can set up, you can accept payments for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, and just now they added their own stablecoin, so you can spend that. And it works the same way as any payment processor. You come into the store, you say, I want to buy the product for $100. You figure it out in Bitcoin. You immediately, the merchant gives you the code to send it to. You send it to the merchant, and then Coinbase does exactly what I said BitPay does. They send the merchant the exact dollar amount, and then Coinbase then sells the coins on its exchange. So it's a very good way for Coinbase to make a fortune, because they can't lose on that transaction because they're getting a fee on both ends. The only way they can lose is if they process the payments and no one wants the Bitcoin on the other end. Now, generally, that hasn't been an issue. Right now, volumes are very high of people buying and trading cryptocurrency, so it doesn't seem to be an issue there. All right, more adoption. We've talked about Bitcoin ATMs, and I'm not sure they present a large volume amount of crypto buying, but they do represent a ubiquity that shows that the Bitcoin payments and Bitcoin in general and cryptocurrencies are entering the mainstream. And probably no more so than Coinstar. Everyone knows what a Coinstar is, those kiosks you see in the grocery stores. And they've added in many of their machines the ability to buy a Bitcoin, and they've now expanded that to cover 21 states. They now have 2,200 machines. They had another 100 outlets, another 21 states. And they mention here's their press release, bread, milk, and Bitcoin. It's a very good way of putting it. Consumers can now walk to the local grocery store and purchase digital currency. And again, I'm sure they're not selling tens of thousands. They're not going to sell, well, I don't know. But I know that Square sold about $65 million worth of Bitcoin off its app. I'm not sure people are going to be running to the grocery store with bills and sticking them in the machine, but maybe they will. I know that the Bitcoin ATMs do quite well. And we have in the United States alone 3,100 of those, and almost 5,000 Bitcoin ATMs globally. So if you take Coinstar's 2,200 Bitcoin kiosks in the U.S. plus the 3,200 Bitcoin ATMs in the U.S., you're at over 5,000 of these things in the United States. So it is, I think it's symbolic of adoption. I'm not quite sure. It's a big driver of adoption. But one of the things that I haven't seen, and none of these grocery stores, these big grocery stores that have these machines in the place, except the Bitcoin, which I would believe is inevitable, because I would think if people are in your store and they have money, you'd want them to spend that money there. And if they have converted their dollars into Bitcoin, you want those Bitcoin coming back into the store. I don't think they figured that out yet, but I guess they will once the price or the value of cryptocurrencies goes higher, because right now there's 120, 130, I don't know what it is, $1 billion worth of Bitcoin out there. That's money that can be spent. And if I were a merchant, I'd want to get that. That's additional monies out there. Now, Dorsey, your friend Jack, Twitter, he owns Square. He runs Square, which has the Cash app. He's mentioning he's a big proponent of Bitcoin. He doesn't seem to be interested in all the other what they call excrement coins. He's pushing Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin on the app, but he's also hiring people to do all kinds of upgrades and UI stuff for Lightning Network. And he is saying, interestingly enough, that mass Bitcoin adoption is inevitable and that he is working to do that. Now, that's quite ambitious to have it mass. He's calling it the first global currency, which is wrong. We've had global currencies before, and the dollar's a global currency. But in any event, he's really pushing for it. You got to keep an eye on that, because he's not in an insignificant position. Making Bitcoin mass adoption inevitable. I don't know, but that's what he's saying. All right, what other stories do we have here? ErisX. Now, ErisX, I believe, is responsible. Some people say it was people trying to get money out of China. I think in the last month, the reason the cryptocurrencies spiked the way they did was because of ErisX, and most people don't even know what ErisX is. ErisX is a digital trading platform for crypto, and it's backed by TD Ameritrade and other investors, and they launched their over-the-counter product last month, which allows institutions to buy cryptocurrencies. And I think because of their status and knowing all the big players and being part of TD Ameritrade, not part of, but connected with TD Ameritrade, I think they were able to get a lot of institutions on board. And part of this over-the-counter trading, they have to set up clients, and they have to integrate their system so that they can trade. I think this is the type of thing with the institutions. And I'll leave the links to these tomorrow in the notes. But the TD Ameritrade had a video on this. It came out a couple of days ago, basically saying institutions at long last are coming into crypto. And because it's such a small market, obviously this was driven by retail first. It's usually the other way around. Normally institutions they front run everything, and then they dump it on the retail investors. Now you have the retail investors. They have most of the cryptocurrencies, and they're going to dump it on the institutions, it seems like. I mean, who knows? It's not investment advice. It's just what might happen. Now, Peter Schiff. Now, let me just see if there's anything else on the Cash App of Jack Dorsey. Yeah, here's Jack Dorsey himself. This isn't Took some time, but getting there from Square Crypto. We're getting close to making our first hire, so let's set some expectations. True to Jack's founding tweets, we are building open source projects that will make mass adoption not just possible, but inevitable. So, and Jack is saying took some time, but getting there. I don't know what these projects are, but we'll see how they all pile out. Now, Peter Schiff the other day had a debate, a lively debate with Saifedean Ammous, who wrote a book called The Bitcoin Standard. And Peter Schiff is known as a gold promoter. And one of the points made during the debate was Peter was scoffing the fact that anyone would want to receive a salary in Bitcoin. He's also scoffed at the fact that you can't pay your taxes in Bitcoin, which is not true. In Ohio, you can. But Kraken Exchange jumped in, I guess an assist for a Saifedean Ammous, and said, we respect the quest for sound money, but at Peter Schiff is wrongo star when he says there is no way that people are going to work for salaries paid in Bitcoin. Kraken says, we paid 250 salaries in Bitcoin in April, and more employees are opting every month. They went on to say, I don't know if I have the tweet here, that there was somebody who accepted crypto as salary in 2012, and they are now since retired. Très interessant, isn't it? Now, this one is concerning. I don't know why Yahoo is running this series, these almost like public service announcements. Every day I see one, how to buy Bitcoin in Brazil, how to buy Bitcoin, who cares? How to buy Bitcoin in Canada. You never see this for gold or silver, how to buy silver. It's very interesting that, I don't know, I don't want to suggest why they do it, but it just seems odd that Yahoo runs these how to buy crypto. It's like how to buy Apple stock. I don't know why they're saying that, but all right, let's move on. Back to Peter Schiff. I don't know what he's thinking. The other day, I think he did a good job in the debate with Saifedean, but when he was at that conference the other day, he was saying that millennials are pretty much young and dumb and don't know what they're doing. Well, that's not a way to sell gold. Here's the article here again. Generation Bitcoin, 90% of millennials prefer crypto to gold. I don't think the way you tell them you should buy gold is saying you're young and dumb. I think you need to explain why gold is a complement to Bitcoin, or why, I don't know. It's not my job to sell gold or Bitcoin, but I don't think calling potential customers young and dumb is the winning ticket. All right, Robinhood. I want to talk quickly about Robinhood because they're a Bit license, a New York Bit license holder. They're very hard to get. They're probably expensive to get. Robinhood allows, and millennials love this kind of stuff, you can trade stocks on your phone. Well, Robinhood is now allowing you to buy Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, Litecoin, and Dogecoin directly from the Robinhood app in New York. Now, why is that a big deal? Because New York's got 18 million people, at least it used to. It probably doesn't have that many now, but I'm sure New York City's got 7 or 8 million. There's probably a few million out in the rest of the state. So it's a big market, and Robinhood is now set to sell. Again, it's just another place. Not everyone who has a Robinhood app is going to buy Bcash or any of these other things, Dogecoin or Litecoin, but some of them will. And again, it's just incremental adoption there. Binance is saying that volumes are much higher now than they were in the peak of December 2017, January 2018, and Binance is the world's largest cryptocurrency trading operation. So interesting news there. Coinbase mentioned, I mentioned this, that they've got a dollar stable coin. It's backed by FDIC dollar deposits, and they're now saying you can use that. In other words, so let's say you've bought Bitcoin or any of the other stuff that they sell on Coinbase, and when you sell, you can sell for dollars, and then they'll send it to your bank account. Or you can sell, and this is what Bitfinex does with Tether. This is now what most of the exchanges have, is some type of stable coin, whether it's their own or they use one of the others. Coinbase has their own. You sell, you get your proceeds, and instead of getting them into dollars and shipped to a bank account, they put them in a stable coin, which is supposedly backed by dollars. But you can then keep the stable coin and go and spend it. So this eliminates having to go back to the bank and which is a very interesting thing because it does cut out the bank. Because when you cash out, you can cash out in a stable coin, but if you can spend the stable coin, you never have to go to the bank or work through the bank. So I think it's a pretty big development that if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't think it was a big deal, but it does change the dynamic of who's collecting fees and who's controlling portions of a transaction. And here's just another story here, just buttressing what Binance said. Centralized crypto exchanges saw a major monthly volume uptick in April. Of course, when the price rises, you get the FOMO crowd. They come in and they buy. WhatsApp, we mentioned the other day, you can now send and receive Bitcoin and Litecoin on your WhatsApp. It's a big messaging service. And Zulu Republic, who helped set up the application, says they've seen 2 million interactions with our Bitcoin wallet. I don't know what interactions are. I'm sure it's not transactions. Probably people opened it and looked at it. But even if a small percentage do anything, that's probably a pretty big deal. What we got here? No, it's junk. This is just an interesting, typical JP Morgan story. JP Morgan banker has been charged with bribery in connection with the bank's landing of an IPO. There's a lot of fraud in that banking, isn't there? That's shocking. What else do we have? Now, we mentioned the Litecoin halving coming up. Not much else to discuss that, but the Litecoin hash rate is now at an all-time high, which is interesting. And it probably needs to be that high. If they're going to go into the halving and they're going to cut the reward, they probably need to have everything going north instead of south as they head into that. Interesting thing here, this is I'm not quite sure what's going on here. This is an exchange, OKEX, which is an exchange, and there's not supposed to be, I would think, they're supposed to be crypto coin neutral. They shouldn't be promoting, well, I don't say they shouldn't be, but I don't know. Let me know what you think on this one. They put out a tweet, light up the darkness. It's about time to light up the market with Litecoin. And they tagged Litecoin in Satoshi Light, which is Charlie Lee. Now, some people think that's because there's some type of arrangement that they have. They're going to have some type of deal. I don't know what it could be. I tend to think, you can't really see it here, but it says May to August 2019. I think they're just talking about the lighting up of the run-up to the halving, which happens in August. I could be wrong. I don't know. But it's funny that, not funny, but it's odd that they would put May to August. I think they're just talking about what might happen there. Now, here's one, and I get to do Bernie. I'm so happy. Bernie Sanders to crash Walmart's shareholder meeting. And the reason, I'll explain it.
So the problem with Walmart is that the workers do not have a seat on the board. And so when the 1% and the CEO and the executives at the company are making thousands of times more than the workers who are not paid a living wage of $15 or more an hour, then we need to have representation. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to tell them that that when I become...
All right, that's something like that. All right, what else do we have here? That was tonight's Moronica. That's over. And I think we're just about done here. Yep, that's all the stories we have tonight. Let me know what you're thinking about this gold-backed ruble, cryptocurrency, or any of the other stories. And if you enjoyed this, or you enjoy any of the Smaulgld YouTubes and analysis, please consider joining Subscribestar, one of the Smaulgld mug stacker clubs, or joining Patreon and making a small donation every month, or donating one time via PayPal, Bitcoin, Litecoin, or sending your donation to P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. I do appreciate when I get mail or when I get donations. It doesn't quite pay the bills, but it does help, and I do appreciate that. And it's always good to have you here, Smaulgld Mug Stackers. And if you need a mug, make sure you go over to smaulgld.com. You should go there anyway, because that's where all the charts are and all the other offers. If you're interested in buying gold or silver, you can do so. Smaulgld gets a small commission if you buy through those links below this BitChute, below this YouTube, from Money Metals Exchange, Golden Eagle Coins, and SD Bullion. All right, let's see what y'all are saying in the comments. Got the normal crowd here. Max Headroom says he's ready, set, go. Fiona's here, Ann is here, Pablo, and latecomers. Oh, I gotta get this right here. Ann says, I think Russians are some form of Viking descent. You see, we've got DNA discussions going on here at Smaulgld, even though we never discussed DNA, but that's all right. We have some healthy discussions in the Smaulgld live chat. Okay, Michael McConville, which looks like a new Smaulgld listener. He says the problem surely is verifying the gold, but once verified, the blockchain should stop any fraud. Okay, however, a gold crypto would sure be unstable. Well, you may be able to verify the gold. I guess the question is, I guess you could ask for delivery, and if the gold left the vault, the blockchain would have to cover it, and I don't know. It's clearly doable to. I mean, there's already certain tokens that are backed by gold, cryptocurrencies. It doesn't sound like it was a big priority for the central bank governor there at Russia. Let's see. I'm looking for comments with Smaulgld. Here we go. Anton S. You always bring the facts on the table. Awesome. And he gives a little clap. All right. That's what I like. All right. Guys are talking about women and dating. What's going on here? You guys are talking about Nancy Pelosi. She's lost it. I'm glad you're paying attention to this small. I think some people, they just like to listen in the background, and they just carry on with the conversation that they're having here on the live stream. Binance. All right, we got no more. Oh, here's one. Fiona. I am positive the Russians make serious effort to de-dollarize. Of course they are. They're under sanctions from the United States, and they don't do much trade with the U.S. anyway. Then why wouldn't they? But they don't know how to do it. No one does. Well, yeah, that's the problem. That is the issue. Well, China is much different than Russia. Russia doesn't have trade with the U.S. China's got massive trade with the U.S. Russia doesn't issue a lot of dollar-denominated debt. China issues more of it than anyone in the world. They run their state-owned banks, state-owned enterprises by borrowing in dollars, not in yuan. And they have those $1 trillion worth of U.S. Treasury. So, yeah, it's very hard to de-dollarize if you are China. Now, for Russia, it is still hard to de-dollarize because they still have to deal with the rest of the world, which deals with the United States, which means they need dollars. So Russia can Russia can get rid of all of its treasuries. They're still going to have dollars, and they can not trade with the U.S., and they can trade with other countries, but the other countries are still part of the dollar system. Smaulgld, we're allowed to talk amongst ourselves. Get over. Of course you are. I'm just commenting on it. I'm not prohibiting it. I'm not saying get off my lawn here. I'm just saying I'm noticing that the conversations are occurring, which is a good thing, because that means that the people are enjoying themselves and they're listening to each other and they're with respect, and they come here every night and they know it's a good place, and that Smaulgld is a good guy. Well, thank you, Bernie. And I want to thank everyone else here tonight, and we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday night, which means, I'll give you the schedule, Friday night crypto with Smaulgld, Saturday, we do only crypto, Saturday is Saturday night silver with Smaulgld, where we do just silver, and Sunday night is Sunday solid gold Sunday with Smaulgld, and maybe with Seamus. Maybe we'll have Seamus come along, because we know he loves his gold. Oh yes. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow evening. And if I don't get any more, I'm gonna let Bernie give you the countdown, and then we're gonna say goodnight. All right. So 10. This is the countdown for Lewis and Smaulgld. 10, and the mug stackers and the game changers. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Have a good night.